So
Yeah, I called somebody I know in San Diego, asked them to make a couple calls for me because I was supposed to do Oceanside. It's the end of March. He said like everything shut down. I don't really
yeah, I
think it's
don't
going to happen. But I know a
you
couple
know
people that work with Ironman on that race, so I said, hey, maybe you can make a call to him and see. I just, I don't really want to book a flight, book a hotel,
mhm.
book my tri-bike transport, and then have to cancel them all again, which I did already. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I can't see Oceanside happening. Um, the first race that I actually see taking place, and I still think it would be too early, but it's because of where it is probably going to be St. George. Um, yeah, I still think that's early in the year, but it's a less populated area. It's a
Right.
more conservative state, so they're a little more relaxed on the regulations. So I see St. George kind of being the first one to roll, and that's in May. Um, but I think probably by end of June, beginning of July, the racing will be happening in some form.
Right.
There's already, like, here in Maryland anyway, we had local races happening in the fall that they were able to do different, safety precautions and splitting races over 2 days instead of one to keep field sizes down and things like that. So, and I know that was kind of happening around the country. They did challenge Daytona, which
Right. I saw that.
yeah, it's not a small race. I did it the first year. It's not Ironman size where it's 3,000 people, but I mean there's 1,500 people there. It's not a tiny race, and they did. I had some friends down there racing, and from everything I heard, they did an exceptional job of managing crowds, of keeping everything under control and spacing it out and doing stuff like that. So there's a lot that's being learned, and things that can be put in to process for other events. So the first half of the year, I think it's a coin flip. It'll depend on the size of the race and the event, the state that it's in and all that stuff. But I think by end of June, beginning of July, they'll be racing much more consistently with protocols in place.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
why don't we start, and Tim, talk to us about how we can plan a training schedule around COVID. So Stephen just said, can you even see events coming up? So maybe the first event will happen in August. So how do you plan for that at this point? What do you do?
So it comes down to a handful of things. For a lot of people, most triathletes right now are in a situation like Stephen was talking about, where he had a bunch of races planned in 2020 that, everything's been deferred to 2021, right? So they're already on your schedule. There's a lot of uncertainty. So you don't want to not prepare for them and then have them happen. That's the biggest kind of thing. But what I've been telling my clients is, right now in this situation we're in, you just need to adjust your focus. Normally your focus is on race day, right? It's preparing for race day. You always have a carrot out in front of you. But if any of y'all have ever been injured or been on travel and had a reason where you couldn't train for any kind of length of time, when you have that stuff going on, you realize how much your training is good for your mental health. So there's been a shift in focus of, well, instead of just getting to the race, it's having this as a regular part of my schedule where everything else is no longer regular. It's great for your mental health. It's great as a stress reliever. I really thought that I was going to see a huge drop in clients when everything, by the middle of summer, when we're not racing. But most of the people that I was talking to that I was working with were like, well, but right now I'm working from home and I'm teaching at home and I'm, nothing makes sense and everything is backwards from what is normal except my training. Like my training is it's your rock, it's your thing that hasn't changed. So they were holding on to it for a totally different aspect. So if you're there mentally, then you say, okay, there's no racing. So usually your training is just stepping to the race, right? You never really have a ton of time during season to focus on anything in particular in your training. It's always about training for the next event. So what we've been doing is we don't know what's happening. You have a weakness over longer distances for running as far as maintaining speed. So let's focus on that because we can't do it during the season because we have to train for a whole bunch of stuff, right? Or your swim form is an issue, but you have to make sure that you're getting your volume in so that you can swim 2000 on race day. Well, let's take a swim day and slow it down and make it only 1000 or 1500 in the pool and make it very slow, deliberate, and work on that piece of your form so that when we go back to regular training, you're more efficient. So really what it just becomes is a shift of focus from getting to Oceanside. We're just going to use Steven's first example, right? Instead of saying, I just got to get to Oceanside, it's let's make sure I'm getting the basics I need for Oceanside, in terms of getting your volume in, right? You don't want to only be riding an hour or whatever if you're going to have to do a 56-mile bike, but let's now focus on it from a different aspect, Yeah. So that has helped a lot of my people a lot. Like I did lose a few, it was expected, but my roster now is bigger than it was pre-pandemic. So,
That's awesome.
It was just changing your approach.
So what I'd like to do, since this is, a meet the coach, talk to the coach type of thing, is if anybody has questions, just jump in. I'm going to ask you another question, just to kick it off. A lot of people that I run with have been saying to me, I'm not motivated. I mean, a lot of the people that you've been talking about sounds like they're somewhat motivated, right? To keep like a mental head. But how do you keep motivated when there's not a race in sight?
So here's what I will say. There's two sides to that coin. There are, the really, really type A, the triathlete that everybody kind of has the example of in their mind, right? You go to an Ironman race and they're almost arrogant in their, in their have to have a grasp and do everything 100%, right? And then there's the people that need motivation, whether it's someone to give them a push from behind, or they need a race out in front of them, or something like that. They're to kind of keep them going. Myself, for example, I have trained consistently day in, day out, barring, injury, surgery, something like that, since 2006. I have not had an extended off period except for recovering from surgery, from bike crash and stuff like that since 2006. So it's going on 15 years. I trained really hard early into the pandemic in case races came back, and I shifted my focus. I was like, oh, instead of racing, I'm going to go run this through trail thing that's 50K that, and kind of just sounds fun. Let's go do it. Or I'm, going to go do this, and shifted my focuses. And then in July, I just was kind of tired and had the sense that racing wasn't coming back in a form that, that maybe was going to interest me, or if it was, I wasn't going to be so worried about results. I took time off for the first time since 2006. In 2 months, I ran 3 times in 2 months. I still rode my bike, you know, a couple times a week, just more like getting outside and riding my bike and looking at scenery and going and riding with my wife and going and, you know, or whatever, like just kind of more meandering down the roads than training. And it was amazing. Like it was amazing for me. You know, I haven't had a life that had that in, you know, almost half of my lifetime on earth, right? So it was good for me. So there's nothing wrong with lacking motivation to a point and needing to step back and needing to get a reset in some form or fashion. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Even the best athletes on the planet, you know, the professionals and stuff, when their seasons end, they take 4 to 8 weeks off. No structure, you know, they go and kind of do what they're given basic guidelines, keep your runs under this duration, nothing hard, keep, you know, that kind of stuff. And they kind of just freewheel and do what they feel like doing to get a reset. So if you're lacking motivation, maybe you need to step back a little as opposed to trying to fight through it, because it gives you a better appreciation for it. Now, I'll tell you, I took 2 months off. When I got back to running, like it didn't feel quite so great, right? I was a little heavier. You know, my engine wasn't primed the way it normally is. It took me a month to get back into the swing of it. But it was really good for me mentally. And when I came back, it was like, man, I miss this. This is a lot of fun. You know, it kind of brought fun back to it versus purpose. So that's something to consider. If you have something that may be coming down the road where you need to be motivated and you need to train, you know, like maybe your friends that you're running with actually, you know, maybe they're doing some kind of a endurance challenge or they have a virtual race or something that they actually want to do, then I would say that they need to look at their why. You know, why are you doing it? Why did you start doing it? Why did you continue doing it? Because unless you're an elite athlete, it's not really about times. It's not really about finished positions. Like they look good and you may say, I want to win or I want to better my 5K time or whatever. But those numbers are the result more of you wanting to better yourself, right? It's not, well, I want to go fast, you know, I need to hit this time. It's, well, I want to be better than I was before, or, you know, or you did it for some other reason, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you got to look inside of yourself and figure out what it was that drew you to it in the first place. Or if someone else drew you to it, it was what made you stay. And go back to focusing on that as opposed to focusing on, well, there's no races or, you know, I don't know what's going on. You know, if you came from a running background at all, then you know, if you ran first, which most people did because it was easiest to do, when you started bike riding, you probably fell in love with it because it felt so much easier than running, right? Like your body hurt so much less in the days that followed. So shift over to the, man, I just enjoy being on the bike and it's fun and enjoyable, or what have you. You just need to readjust your why.
Thank you. Okay, anybody want to open it up?
And it can be preseason planning, like I know that's what the title is, but if there's something specific you guys are thinking about outside of that, that's fine too. Like these are really kind of meant to be open to what you want them to be. So feel free to ask whatever questions and make, you know, take from it whatever you like.
Okay, so I have 2 questions, Tim. One, I identified, you know, one area I needed to work on was my mobility, especially in my spine and my hips. Hillary suggested, and I agree, that I should look into some yoga as a way to do that. Do you have any particular yoga? Because I know there's all different flavors of it that you would recommend.
Yeah, there are tons. what I would say about any kind of whether it's mobility, strength training, anything like that, it's very personal as to what motivates you to keep doing it. For example, like strength training is great and we should all strength train, but most of us don't. I personally hate doing like Olympic lifting, right? So if that was what program I was looking at, I wouldn't do it. I'm much more of a dynamic movement. Like I like battle ropes and landmines and heavy bags and things like that. So I gear my strength training around those things. And yoga is the same way. Like I cannot for the life of me get myself to stick with yoga. Yoga in the process that we traditionally associate with it of either a classroom type environment, right? A class environment or DVD where you follow this general series of progressions. That does not work for me at all. Like I just can't stick with it. So what I kind of did was my mobility program for myself is set up more like a strength training program in that I have a series of movements that I want to do. And I have a certain amount of reps that I'm going to do them. And then I have a progression of how I go through them. Just like if I was writing a strength program or a track workout or something like that. So if you are a hips and lower back person, that's where you need to be or where you need to concentrate on, then there are certain movements that are exceptionally good for that. Like the best one, and we've all seen it, is called a pigeon stretch. Which is where you basically like kind of tuck your foot underneath and you take one leg straight out and one leg you turn it basically like a 90-degree or as close as you can, and then you almost get into like a similar to a plank position type thing. That is easily the best movement for lower back and hip mobility. So you just want to find, what I would suggest is Google, because it's everybody's best friend. Like yoga movements for cycling, because most lower back and hip issues come from cycling. They don't come from running and they don't come from swimming. So that will give you a database of, you're going to have 30, 40 movements on there. And then you can kind of play with the ones that fit, that you enjoy doing or that target the areas that you want to target. And then you can kind of just very easily create your own progression of movements, doing the ones you like that will keep you doing them. Because that's ultimately, it's got to be something that you're going to want to do, or you just won't do it.
Okay, thanks. The second question that I had is, I have 2 races that I have scheduled. One is in October. It'll be a 70.3 out of Montauk. And then the other one, that's my primary goal this year. And then the other one is an Olympic at the end of June, which I'm basically using as a training race.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the training programs overlap by 4 months. So the last 4 months of the Olympic overlap with the last 4 weeks for the Olympic overlap with the last 4 weeks, or the first 4 weeks of the 70.3.
Okay.
So am I better off following the Olympic and then jumping up into the 5th week of the 70.3, or vice versa?
So without seeing the plans, that would be really hard for me to specifically say.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is, even though the Olympic is a training event for you, my assumption is you still want to give it your best on that day, right? You don't want, like, you want to test your fitness and your nutrition and see where you're at. You don't want it just to be like a casual walkthrough.
Mm-hmm.
So the training for an Olympic to a half, when done properly, the intensities don't actually vary that much. What really varies is the volume. Like just as an example, my threshold on the bike, I'll just use heart rate numbers. So in an Olympic, I try to average about 163 to 165 beats per minute on the bike. In a half Ironman, even though it's more than twice the distance, I average 161 to 163. So the intensity is very similar, and running is the same. You might be at threshold versus just under threshold, or you know, there's little variances, but they're small. I mean, it's 5% maybe. So I would, if it were me, I would follow the Olympic plan through, because the Olympic plan is going to make you, it's going to focus more on strength and speed than the early stages of a half Ironman plan will. And it will give you a proper taper for the race. So assuming that half plan is probably 3 weeks of work and then a down week is pretty typical for like kind of plans. I would actually do your Olympic, then I would take your next week easy, you know, to give yourself proper recovery. And the following weekend, I would jump into the end of week 5. You know, but that's without seeing them, that would be the way I would probably gauge it.
Okay.
You know, just knowing how most kind of canned plans are written in terms of formatting.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Man, it was so bad. Nicole left. She just walked away. She was like, "This isn't fun."
Hello.
Howdy.
I have a
What's
question.
up there, West Coaster?
Sorry, I've just been quietly listening. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
So my question is, I've been spending probably all of last year, every single month, paying about $100 to invest in different things for my art loft, which you cannot see because I've got my screen up. But for the things that I started out with the Pilates Reformer, I eventually bought a small mini treadmill. So now I can just run whenever I wanted to. And after I got spit on by somebody in March, I just started running indoors because I didn't want to deal with the violence and stuff that was happening just a couple of miles away. So, so I have those things and I have some weights. And then I'm just wondering if you were me, trying to put maybe $100 a month to investing in different pieces of equipment, what would you add and what would you prioritize? Like, would you go for the kettlebells first? Would you go for a heavier set of weights? What would you get?
So I have a pretty big gym here at home. Like I have a 500 square foot gym that I could, all money set aside, I could literally put anything in it I wanted to, pretty much, in terms of space. But I am the hardest person in the world to get to spend money on stuff. So I have all this space with nothing in it, or just stuff that I've had for a very long time. The best, in my opinion, the best piece of equipment that I have upstairs in my gym for strength training is I bought an adjustable kettlebell. Now it's not there. There's different types. There's ones that literally you can like push a button and slide a weight out and stuff like that. I don't really trust those. I feel like that thing's going to fly off when I'm doing some kind of swing and then I'm going to need a new window or something. So I did spring a little bit and I bought one. It's from a company called Titan Fitness, which is one of the bigger, like kind of CrossFit, tough power man kind of, equipment companies. It is a cast iron shell, like a normal kettlebell, that has a screw in the bottom that comes out, and then you actually take the weights out of it and close it back up. And it goes from 15 to 72 pounds. So I can do almost every kettlebell movement with that. And I think it was $120 and the shipping was free. That has been, it is the same size as a competition kettlebell. It's no bigger. It's not bulky. It's same size as a normal kettlebell. And it has been the best tool that I have up there as far as cost to use ratio. It has been awesome. So if you were looking at expanding your weight collection, I would look at something like that, because it's cost effective as well as space effective. So I would start there. You can do like power blocks. They make adjustable dumbbells that are the same way. They are a little costly. So there's something that, they're $400 or $500 for a good set. So it's not in that $100 realm. But if you were looking, but they also replace like 12 sets of dumbbells. So it's like, well, instead of spending $100 this month on one pair or two pairs of dumbbells, then I can save for a couple months and get the equivalent of 10 or 12. That works more with my mindset of how I like to do things.
I'm intrigued by the mini treadmill you have. I haven't heard of one of those. So
They're small. They're only like 2.5 feet long or 3 feet long.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're tiny.
They're amazing for smaller space, although this is 1,700 square feet. It's not small, but it slides right underneath my couch. It was small enough for me to be able to get it from the FedEx office in a giant box into my car and get it out and get it into my arm loft by myself with no help. So that already tells you that the 70 monstrosity of a box,
That's pretty awesome.
being a much less weighty item itself once you take it out of the box. The one thing that it did that I didn't expect on it is that you really have to speed up your cadence and shorten your stride. And what that did is it actually made me overall faster and I had less injuries. So for 2020, I ended up running about 1,140 miles with no injuries for the first time in like forever. And it's still keeping up some biking and stuff and no swimming at all because I couldn't access a pool. That's what it ended up doing. And even my chiropractor asked, like, usually you're kind of injured by now. What's going on? You've been doing a lot of trail miles. And I went, well, I've shortened my stride and I've sped up my cadence, which is what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
Right.
That is correct.
The back end of this treadmill, it is that small.
Yep. That is literally it's fixing your form, which is great because most injuries are shock related injuries in running and it's from overstriding, so that's not what you bought it for, but it's become a pretty awesome tool. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. My trail buddy said, what happened to you? Because for a while we weren't running together. And then when we could, after some restrictions loosened, we were going downhill and I was using that same technique really, really fast. And I just beat him downhill, like beat the pants off of him. He's like, what the heck? Like,
That's awesome.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
It's
making me like want to go out and get one.
There's only one small drawback to it for the overall public, and I don't think it affects any of us here in this group, but there is a weight restriction to it. So there were all these people asking about, like, could you get away with this, do you think, or would it have too much impact on that tiny child? The really bigger issue is that if you have very long legs, this might not be the product for you. It's not so much just weight, it is the length of your leg and stride, because you really have to be like a hamster. Mm-hmm. It's a hamster belt, that's what it is.
That's your Halloween costume. You could get like take a couple hula hoops and put them up this way, with like a bar, and then you could just run on your treadmill and you'd look like a hamster on the wheel.
The other thing that we're kind of laughing about is that the advertisements all say that you can only go, top speed is supposed to be 6 miles per hour. And I'm just like, that's slow. If you want to do some interval training. Actually, I've taken up to 10 miles per hour, no problem. But you just have to really watch your form.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder if they put that speed limiter on there because it
Safety.
doesn't have the safety, you know, you don't have near the margin of error as you do on a normal treadmill.
Right. But because I'm, a tiny pocket Asian, it's not a big deal for me. It's like it works. But if I had long legs, I would not want that treadmill. But it is under $300, fits under your couch. Man, you should put it in your office.
Nicole's going to have one soon right under her standing desk.
Yeah.
And she's going to be in the next meeting, just kind of.
Oh, my
Haven't
clients
seen
love
the
it.
elliptical, right?
My clients love it. They watch me like walk in and talk to them because I'm a counselor. So they don't
Right.
care as long as I'm paying attention to them.
That's funny.
That's awesome. That's
They're
awesome.
like, as long as I get my money's worth, whatever.
If the therapist is happy, they're happy.
That's a good start.
Any other questions?
Excuse me.
Preseason planning.
Who thinks they're racing this year? Anybody? Ray?
I do, but I think it's going to be later in the year.
Yeah, later in the year. After, I don't think there's going to be anything through June around here, is my guess. Maybe in July we'll start up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I have low confidence.
I think the first race we'll see here in Maryland will probably be like the Bay Swim. You know, just because that's easy to space out. We have the Chesapeake Bay Swim here, where they swim 4.5 miles across the bay, in the shipping channel between the spans of the Bay Bridge. So, you know, but we shall see. It'll be.
I guess I have a question too.
Yeah.
I don't do swimming or riding, so
That's
my
okay.
teammates know me. It's all about running for me. I haven't been courageous enough to kind of go in the other direction yet, but
We'll get you yet.
we have done, I have done 2 50Ks last year. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you see as the natural progression from a 50K to what the next step is after that? And then how you would train and how long you would train for that?
So, since we're talking ultra running and trail running, there's not really, like in road running, we'll say you go, right, there's 5K, 10K, you know, some people do a 15K or they go to a 10 miler, then you go to a half marathon, then maybe you can find a 20 miler or you go to a marathon, right, is kind of the progression of distance. In trail running, it's usually like 5K, 10K, 25K, 50K, 50 miler, right? And then 100K and up. So there's not really like a small stepping stone. What I would say though, is the jump from 50K to 50 miler is significantly easier than the jump from a half marathon to a marathon. And depending on how much you run, like if I'm ultra training, I'm running 5 or 6 days a week. But what I do is for a 50 mile, like if I was training for a 50 miler, I would never go out and run more than 50K in a single run, but I would stack runs together. So I could have a 45 or a 50 mile weekend where I would do, you know, 20 and 10, 20 and 15, you know, 25 and 15, you know, and stack them back to back, usually with the longer run first, so you're fresher when you do it. And the reason for that is you're much less likely to end up injured. The hardest part of ultra running is getting to a starting line healthy. It's like an Ironman. It's hard to do, is getting there healthy. So splitting your workouts, doing split runs, and I do them for my road people too. Like if they got to get a 20-mile weekend in because they're training for an Ironman, but they're fatigued, I might have them do 12 in the morning and 8 in the afternoon or something like that. Or in the case of an ultra, split them back-to-back days. You are just as tired. you are just as fatigued when you do the run, but your body has a chance to recover so it doesn't break down. So I don't, if you're comfortable at 50K, even though it's long and, it can be hard or whatever, if you're comfortable with the distance of 50K, going to 50 miles is not going to be much different in training. For 50 miles, you really have to nail your nutrition. At 50K, you can still kind of get by if your nutrition's a little off and you may lose 30 minutes or an hour. In a 50 miler, if your nutrition's off, you're losing 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, not making it to the finish line before the cutoff. Like the consequences are exponentially higher. So I would start with what you're currently using for 50K training and maybe just adding back-to-back longer runs on the weekends to fill it out. And kind of really try to nail down your nutrition. But if you can master both, get both of those things in check, you'll be plenty good to go to do 50 miles.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And come here and run the JFK. We have the JFK right here. So, it's like the oldest 50 miler in the country.
I hope so.
It's also, well, it has come down. It used to be very expensive. And it used to be a lottery and it was nuts and stupid. So then we created Stone Mill 50 miler to run the very next weekend. But now JFK, you can actually sign up and get into it. The course is 20 minutes from my house.
When is it?
It's November. It's usually,
That would be a good time.
yeah, it's the weekend. It's always the weekend that falls right around the 22nd of November because that's when JFK was assassinated. So they run it usually that weekend. My birthday is the 21st, so JFK usually falls right around my birthday. But it's interesting. You run on the AT for like 18 miles, and then you run a marathon on the C&O Canal.
Wow.
Yeah, so you run along the Potomac for 26 miles, and then you turn off, and the last 8 miles are on the road.
So it's half road, half trail?
It's 42 miles trail, 8 mile, the last 8 miles road, but the C&O section is basically rail trail that's dirt. So like it's hard packed. Like I would run that section in road shoes. I would run trail shoes for the first section. You get off on there at 18.5 miles onto the canal, change shoes when you see your crew, and then rock and roll the rest of the way.
That's great. Okay, anybody else? Stephen, you have any more questions? Nicole?
No, I agree with a lot of stuff Tim said, though. I've been trying to just maintain what I've been doing and just try to get some exercise and try to just stay focused. It's good for my mental health more than my physical well-being, but both are doing okay, so I can't complain.
There you go. Yeah, we'll be back to racing soon. In the summer, we'll be back racing in some form, and then everybody will be happy and remotivated and reinvigorated, and you'll all be getting your vitamin D, and you'll have events to go to, and
it is. It's nice to be able to look forward to something, but maybe just the discipline doesn't have to be a means to an end. It can just be the end in itself. You have some discipline, You do what you got to do, and you feel good about that. You don't have to look forward to doing something. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of virtual stuff, and there'll be things coming up.
That's what my wife has been doing. She's been doing, one of our local race directors here has been doing virtual challenges, and they're usually like time challenges or distance challenges, and they'll be 2 or 3 months long, and you can choose varying distances. Right. So she's been doing those as like just to give her a target, right? I got to run 12 miles a week to hit the averages. I need to hit this distance challenge, and she's been doing that versus like me. I just went totally hands off and was like, I'm like, I'll just go do what I want to do, and I'll get back to it when it's time to get back to it, which it's time to get back to it. But so we will see. I will I will be in Cambridge in September, and there will be a race, and all will be right with the world for me. So it will be good.
Well, I hope to see you there, but
Well, I will be there. I lead all the talks and the clinics, and I run the first timers program for Ironman there. That is Ironman Maryland is my baby. It is my favorite week of the year. One of my 2 favorite weeks of the year, along with our Florida camp, which isn't happening this year. So I will be there with bells on.
Although Florida, they're like life is the same.
I'm not going to Florida because I would bring Florida back with me. And that's enough reason not to go to Florida for me.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. If there's no other questions, I guess we will wrap this up.
Yep.
I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you very, very much, Tim. Coach Tim has been wonderful as always. And what's the next subject that you're going to talk about?
So we can do this 2 different ways. One of the things I was thinking about, and this was something that kind of took off during COVID, is how to build swim fitness without a pool. Now, I know we have Carlin, I know Carlin comes in and does a lot of stuff. Like I've known her for a while, and she is the expert in all things swimming, and rightfully so.
Well, she was just here. We just
right.
had her.
I'm not sure how much she gets into dry land stuff versus.
No, we didn't.
Okay. We built a swim strength resistance band, full on 8-week strength training program for people when the pools closed down in the spring last year. And we're leaning now towards either they're open and you have to get a reservation and you may or may not be able to swim, or some of them are closed, or you're just not comfortable going to the gym yet. But you're planning for races and you're worried about whether or not you're going to drown. Seems to be a big thing right now. So we can cover that next month as part of this talk if you want. And then I will create a code that will allow, if anybody wants it, they can go on Training Peaks and get the whole program. We'll just make a code so that it's free. It doesn't cost you guys anything, and share it with the team. So.
Okay. That sounds great. I think that there are pools open, but I think that having dry land training would be really good. Even, just you're away or whatever. Yep. It's awesome. I think that's great.
Yeah, our pools are open here, but I haven't swam since February. So, because they closed, and then it was like, I don't really want to go, like, first it was almost possible to get a reservation, and then it was, I live in kind of a rural area, so people aren't really like as cautious as I would like them to be. So I have just chosen to stay away from the pool for now. So yeah, my last swim was actually at our Florida camp last year in the we go to a 50-meter saltwater Olympic pool for our sessions at camp. And so that was the last time I swam, was February of 2020.
Wow.
It's all been dry land and strength stuff for me. So
the first time we went into the water after not having to swim, I think it was like March when we had the shutdown. I was with Ray, the 2 of us, we get in the open water and we can't swim at all.
Right.
Couldn't. I was like, I don't remember how to swim. It's terrible.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll probably get back in the pool. I'll get back in the pool this spring to start tuning up for races. And I'm like,
when does the water there get warm where you are?
It depends on how hardy of a soul you are. Like I've swam in water in the 50s, and it's like I can tolerate it and it's fine. Usually end of April, beginning of May, It's probably about the same time as for you guys.
Oh,
You know, we're not that far. We're only 3 hours apart. So it's probably about the same. That the end of spring, you know, is usually it's like I can manage.
one more question, Tim. Are you going to do the Montauk?
I need to see what the date is. It'll depend on the date because right now I plan on racing.
Maryland. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that'll depend. Usually I don't race it, I just work it. But this year I'm planning on it. So it'll depend on where it falls. It could even be if it's after it, it could even be like I come up and we could do something like we were gonna do this past year and I could do a short course race or something like that. You know, do the short course version like
That would be, yeah, that
I-
could be really interesting. Okay.
yeah, I just need to see
Cool.
what it is. We'll work.
Well, thank you. Thank you again. We really appreciate your time, Tim. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
I'll
Tim.
see you guys later.
Thank you.
All
Lorena.
right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye guys.
Bye.